So thank you so much for being here and for joining this session that will be focused on women in business in the Middle East. As you might know, our region is really witnessing rapid growth and significant economic transformation. Women increasingly playing a vital role in driving much of this change. Women in the Middle East are today far beyond just holding a seat at these tables. They have evolved into being instrumental architects, shaping the business landscape, driving innovation and growth through leadership and vision. Today's panel featured trailblazing women from across the MENA. Their leadership and vision have not only been inspiring for many, including myself, but have also catalyzed transformation in a variety of industries. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Leila Serhan, General Manager Visa, Shaikha Nowais, Corporate VP at Rotana Hotel, Yalda Aoukar, co-founder and managing partner at Bracket Capital, Hassa Alsaab, diversity and inclusion lead at Saudi Electricity Company. Thank you so much, really, for being here. I know many of you flew all the way to be present today. Today, we have an incredible mix of background experiences, and I'm very excited with the audience here to get to know you more, your evolutions as leaders, the impact you are creating today in your industries, and gain a bit insights on your views on your respective industries as well. I would like to start with you, Leila. Leila, you've held senior positions for many years now. You've been at Microsoft and then moved today to working at Visa. And you've recently been recognized as one of the top 100 most powerful businesswomen by Forbes Middle East. Congrats for that. This is a tremendous achievement. Thank you. Can you tell us more about how you navigated your career path and more specifically how you overcame these challenges across your journey to get into your position today?
Sure. So first, before I start, I want to say two things. One, congratulations to all of the committee that organized this conference. I've been here for the past 2 days. It's been very enriching, and we continue to learn, and especially in this great learning environment. And thank you so much for having me. And the second thing, it's great to see that we finally have women on stage after a full morning. Not that I learned tons from all of the session this morning. So, your question is interesting because, I very early started in my mind with two things. One, about being clear on where I want to go, and two, on trying to plan it the right way. And I think that worked for me. So I started in a small local company in my home country. But then in my mind, I was always saying, if I will continue to be employed, I would want to go somewhere that is bigger. And always had in mind that maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, I don't know. But so kind of having clarity on the steps that you want to take was important. Of course, planning is important, but obviously planning is sometimes hard. Along the way, you fall in love and you meet that guy, and then you have the first child, and then you have the second child. And obviously, this presents bumps, I would say, good bumps along the way. The one thing I learned is not to let those be part of what is holding you back, but more of the things that is going to move you forward. To give you an example, at one point in time in my career, there was this great job that was becoming available, and I was just coming back from my second child maternity leave, and that job required that I relocate. Celia was 4 months old, And I was interviewed, and I applied for the job because I knew that if I don't apply now, it's going to be another 5 years. And it was part of my big plan. And then when I was interviewing, at one point, one of the interviewers told me, but you know, Leila, it's okay if you withdraw your application. It's fine. We're not going to hold it against you. Of course, I did not. But probably the one thing I did not do is to let him know that he would have never told this to a man that was applying. So yeah, you meet those, but how do you make them, again, something that takes you forward, not that holds you back?
Nice. And as we were discussing earlier, you mentioned that you were in a very comfortable position at Microsoft, but then decided to flip and to go ahead with Visa. I mean, my main question here, what really drove your decision, and how did that happen?
So I spent 2 decades at Microsoft. So obviously, after 2 decades, and Microsoft is a fantastic company and continue to renew itself. But after 2 decades, you kind of, you know the people know you, you have the reputation. You could even, after you build a good team, you could even, work much less than before. I think when the Visa opportunity came up, the 2 things attracted me. Obviously, it's a global leader in the payment industry, so I was not leaving a global leader for something else. But the second thing, it was more about, okay, am I ready to challenge myself after almost working for 25 years to learn something new, build a new network, meet new people, and prove myself, right? And I think it's been now almost 3 years. It's been a great journey of challenging myself and learning. So this is also, I think, another aspect that, regardless of where you are in your career, is extremely important that you keep in mind.
So I would say one thing is you were not afraid of moving out of your comfort zone. And
of course, yeah.
Thank you so much. This is a great story. Moving to you, Shaikha, could you tell us more about your journey? I mean, you transitioned as well from very different industries, starting from audit, and then all the way towards Rotana, where you're actually today leading a very, challenging role. Maybe you could tell us about really the journey and how was this transition for you, and what made you successful in this transition, basically?
Before I start, Melissa, I would like to say, going back to what Leila said about her seeking out the opportunity of the interview she had while her kid was only 3 years old. I think embracing opportunities is key. And the reason why I am here today is because I embraced this opportunity of being here. So I wanted to thank you, Abdullah, the team from LBS for having me. And I'm very excited as well to share this exciting panel with all my fellow panelists. So thank you so much for the invite. I started my career with KPMG in 2008. I do not come from a hospitality background at all, but again, embracing opportunities is very important. So I started my career with external audit, then internal audit, and then my father who's the chairman of the company, asked me to join the company in 2011. I wasn't very satisfied with what I took from KPMG. I felt there was still much more to learn from that experience, but I also embraced the opportunity, and I decided to join him. I started with a very extensive training program, which spanned 3 years, where I had the opportunity to experience all the operating departments of a hotel. The hotel industry is a people-oriented type of business. So from F&B, front office, IT, engineering, everything you can think of operating a hotel. I then moved on to the corporate office. We operate 73 hotels today in 25 cities and 14 countries. So I moved to the corporate office, and we're based in Abu Dhabi. We're very proud to say that we are the first hotel management company based out of Abu Dhabi today, and we're the largest hotel management chain. Obviously, we have a lot of international competitors, but I think we have our niche when it comes to what we do and what we give to our owners. So after establishing the internal audit function within corporate, I then got promoted in 2017 to corporate vice president in charge of owners relationship management. And today I have completed around 15 years of my career with Rotana Hotels, and I cherish and value everything I've learned. It's not easy. It wasn't an easy journey at all, but again, perseverance, dedication, commitment is key to success.
I think we talked about something when we were discussing as well, and I asked a question that I would like to share as well today. I mean, being part of a family business comes with its own set of challenges, right?
Absolutely.
Especially if you're part of this family. I mean, how did you manage to build your own brand?
Look, a lot of people think that Rotana Hotels is a family business. It was founded by my father in 1992, and it's a private joint stock company. He founded it with his co-founder, and today we're only a private joint stock company, but he had a lot, he's contributed a lot. He started the company basically after his time with the government in Abu Dhabi, back in Abu Dhabi. It's not easy because you are looked at as the daughter of your father. So it took me so long to prove myself to a lot of my colleagues, even people from outside the company, just to tell them that this is Shaikha, and I can contribute just as much as even more to the company and to the people of the company. So this is the reason I feel it was a tough journey. My father has supported me along the way, but I had to prove myself.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this. Yalda, over to you. You've been also nominated as a Young Global Leader recently, so congrats.
Yep.
Please help me. In your career, you also transitioned from working in finance with some of the biggest names, naming a few, Morgan Stanley, Lehman Brothers, Investcorp, into establishing your own VC. I would love to hear, we all love to hear about this journey of yours, and especially given that today you're playing a vital role in bridging investment opportunities between Silicon Valley and the Middle East.
Absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. And I'd like to echo what my fellow panelists said. Congratulations, LBS, on such a fantastic annual MENA conference. And it's really an honor to be sharing the stage with such an accomplished cohort of female panelists. Thank you for your question. I actually really enjoy telling the story of how I started my career, very much so because it allows me to connect and I remember the person that I was 15 years ago and actually seek a lot of advice from that person when I'm facing sets of challenges. So I started my career in 2008 at Lehman Brothers in investment banking. So obviously a worse time to be in investment banking and an even worse time to be at Lehman Brothers. So as you can imagine, that was a very short-lived experience. I was one of those leaving the Canary Wharf office with the cardboard boxes and the press taking photos, and the next day you would see yourself in the Daily Mail. I then, obviously it was the peak of the financial crisis, and job opportunities were not readily available as they were a year prior in 2007 when the pound was at 2 and everyone was having the time of their life in finance. So I ended up gravitating to private wealth management at Morgan Stanley. The good news is I didn't have to change my commute. So I moved from 20 Bank Street to 25 Bank Street. And at that time, to your point earlier about finding love, I had found my love, but he just so happened to be moving to Qatar. So I needed to convince Morgan Stanley to pay for my business tickets, for my business trip tickets. I could go and see, at the time, my fiance Effectively, in true Lebanese style, I Googled top 10 businessmen, business people in Doha, and sold them on all these relationships that I didn't have in a geography that I had hardly ever visited. And I show up in Doha, it was February 2010, I remember specifically because there was an ash cloud over the UK that had canceled all the flights. And I didn't know anyone. I knew one private banker at Credit Suisse, and I'm sure many of you have interacted with private bankers. They're very territorial. So they would never, ever give you a lead. They would never make an introduction. But what he did do is he gave me his car, and he said, my driver can take you back to your hotel. You're wasting your time. Go back to London. Go cover Dubai. You know, this is not the market for you. And then in the car, I had a eureka moment that I'll never forget. And I asked the driver for his business card, saw that he worked for an agency, called that number the next day, and I was like, please send me a driver. I need someone for the next 5 days. And my only instruction to that person, to that driver, who was an Indian driver, obviously he had no clue where he was going, but I was telling him, you're going to drive me for the next 5 days to all the places you take those Credit Suisse bankers to. So this predates Google Maps, by the way. So I, for all I knew, I could have been abducted. And I would drive and drive and drive, middle of nowhere, Wakra, Al Khor, Wajba. Again, Doha in 2010 is not Doha in 2023. And I would arrive, you'd see those palaces and a gate, and I'd be there with my Morgan Stanley London business card, and I'd be like, I'm here to see the Sheikh. Because obviously it's a palace, there must be someone really important living there. And they would panic, they'd be, oh, you're not on the agenda. And the only comfort I had was I knew that a banker was here before me. So obviously there are meetings taking place in this, whatever organization I decided to knock at the door of. And eventually, I would end up meeting someone. If I didn't meet the Sheikh, I would meet, someone from the family office or a CFO at the organization. And I started creating those connections, and I started establishing these relationships. And then a few years later, 2013, InvestCorp, the mid-cap private equity firm from Bahrain, hears about this Lebanese banker who's literally knocking at the door of everyone in Doha and tells me, do you want to come and lead our office in Doha? And again, that was also a contrarian move from my part, because moving from the UK, where you're at the heart of a financial center, to a market, in an emerging market like Doha, was frowned upon. They're like, if you're not good enough to be in the UK, you move to a market like Doha. But I embraced the opportunity at the time. And those were the years, 2013, 2016, where you had all the big sovereign wealth funds, and to our panel earlier, they were starting to invest super heavily in big American tech companies. So I'm sure many of you would remember when PIF invested, it wasn't called PIF at the time, but they invested in Uber at a $2 billion valuation, and everyone was making fun of them. But unless you were a sovereign, you were not seeing access to flow into growth and late-stage big tech companies in the US. And if you were seeing the flow, it was likely a company that you wanted to sell, not that you wanted to buy, because it meant that the West Coast passed on it, East Coast passed on it, Europe passed on it, all the sovereigns passed on it, and then it was landing at your doorstep. So I pitched InvestCorp. Sorry, I'm going slightly over time. I almost finished, I promise. So I pitched InvestCorp internally. I'm like, look, let me lead your VC practice. This is the business plan. We'll set up in LA. I've identified the partners, and I'm sure there's appetite for it, because at the end of the day, this is a young population, and tech is the trade of our generation, and everyone wants appetite for it. InvestCorp decided it was not the right decision for them. So I was 9 months pregnant with my first, and I decided to resign from InvestCorp. And everyone around me thought I was absolutely insane. Here I am leading an office, super senior position, and I'm effectively leading to do a startup with zero experience in the VC world. And I used to tell people in my industry, my family, my friends, oh no, but I have a hunch this is gonna work. They were like, oh no, it's not a hunch, you're 9 months pregnant, it's hormones. Well, I still did it. I set up a bracket, and 7 years later, here I am, obviously proved many people wrong. We manage, about $1 billion in assets under management, We've launched 3 funds. Thank you. We've launched 3 funds, and to your point about bridging the gap between the tech world in Los Angeles and the Middle East, we launched simultaneously 2 offices in Doha and in Los Angeles. And I like to think that we've barely scratched the surface in terms of the potential that we can achieve.
Thank you. Very, very inspiring, I would say. Hassa, sorry, we took a bit more time to get to you. So you've had also a quite diverse career path. I mean, you've been working in banking, and today you're at SEC. So tell me more about this jump. I mean, how was this journey, the transition? What does it mean to you?
First of all, I want to start by appreciating you and the team for all the efforts that you've done, and what a privilege is it to share my experience with you. I bring in the region and Saudi specifically experience when it comes to women empowerment. If I looked back at my career, I would have not anticipated being here 16 years later speaking about the different ambiance that was going on in Saudi at the time. I started my career in banking because it was the only sector that took in women besides health and education. And it was not actually a very favorable sector because it was, private sector, timing, hours, but it was a very well-structured sector, a very well-governed sector. It's where I learned how to be customer-centric and where I excelled for 4 years. 4 years later, after that, international companies were opening in Saudi. And I had the opportunity to lead a very new trend in Saudi, which was crisis management and business continuity. And it was totally different than my experience. I would say it was a shifting point in my career, because at that time, I knew that I'm capable of doing anything, and that I don't have to follow the norm of having one structured career path. Bank on your personal skills, your knowledge, your personality, and again, your ability to learn very quickly and your resilience. So I joined them as part of the team that created the strategy. At the time, the region had some turbulence. So I was responsible for creating business continuity plans, crisis management plans, and it was there where I shaped my proactiveness approach towards anything in life and learning to plan ahead of time in case anything happened. I was also there where I've learned how to interact with senior executives and leaders as I was drilling them on how to act and how to perform. And I was actually evaluating CEOs on how did they perform when it comes to security and crisis management, reactiveness, and how does this impact our stock, for example. I decided after that, 4 years later into that, to move into another industry, which was very interesting. It's the energy sector, and to be part of a team that established an executive leadership development center that had a vision to create a world-class leadership center that enables sustainable growth for the company and for the kingdom. And that was in Saudi Electricity Company. So, and we've created a beautiful, successful story where today we are happy to say, I'm proud to say that the majority of the leaders sitting at the senior positions are a product of that leadership development center. So it was a very diverse experience. And again, I would have not anticipated that I would be here today speaking about women empowerment and driving that change in Saudi. Saudi is going through a beautiful major transition when it comes to women empowerment. New sectors are opening their doors, new industries are opening their doors. And even if it's difficult, we are working on facilitating the inclusion of women at these sectors and at these business lines.
I mean, to your point, I worked in Saudi for 3-4 years, and I would say within 2 years, I saw a transformation when it comes to the participation of women in the economy in a way that simply I cannot explain it to anyone how it happened.
It's very impressive, and it's part of our capability building program and one of the major pillars in Vision 2030, women empowerment. And I'm happy to share with you a very good news. We've exceeded Vision 2030 targets before Vision 2030. Women participation today sits at 34%.
Wow, amazing.
And not only that, we have a new target of increasing their participation to 40% by 23. So it adds more pressure.
That's amazing. Amazing stuff.
And again, it shows the commitment from the leadership of the country and the senior leaders in the energy sectors towards women empowerment and inclusion in those sectors.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Truly inspiring stories. Really happy to hear how you all navigated successful careers. I would love to move into the next theme now, discuss a bit how each one of you is really championing women empowerment within your sectors. Going back to you, Leila, you manage very diverse markets with very different expectations on women. How do you manage that?
Yeah.
Also, in addition to that, maybe you could tell us a bit some of the work and initiative that you've led regarding women empowerment at Visa and the impact of that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think, obviously, over the years, things have changed. I mean, Saudi is probably the exponential change that happened. But obviously, over the year, I think in many of the markets, so I look after North Africa, the Levant region, and Pakistan, and very emerging market. Many of them are still very conservative. But I've seen a change happening in terms of seeing more women participation, that's for sure. Not enough women at senior level. That remains a huge problem, I think. We don't have enough women at senior level. But things have changed. That's one observation. I remember when I joined Visa 3 years ago, I think we were at 40% women in the workforce. In Middle East and Africa, we just passed the 50% number. I am part of a leadership team of 4 persons that do similar job as mine in different regions. And very proudly, we're 4 women. Actually, the other day, our boss was having a panel with us, and someone said, "Oh, these are Charlie's angels."
That's cute.
But obviously, there's still more to do. Again, saying that how do you bring more women into senior positions? If I think of what we do inside the company, in encouraging this. One of the most important things that women often forget is that the person who is going to give you your next promotion is actually a man.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of things around women networks, and they are super important, super important. I chair the Visa Women Network for Central Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I'm extremely passionate about the work that we do there with all the ladies across 88 countries. But we often forget that that person who's going to give you the promotion is actually a man. And how do you create good allyship with your male colleagues, your male senior leaders? And this is one of the things that I mentor a lot of ladies. I encourage a lot within that Visa Women Network. So this is internally. The other thing we've seen externally is obviously SMEs represent 90% of the economy, of the global economy. It's not different for our region. And more and more we've seen, I mean, someone in the previous panel was talking about, those shops that came, I mean, that just came up. Well, you sell on Instagram, you sell on WhatsApp. All of these are women-led businesses, by the way. Whether they do craft at home or they cook at home or whatever, they do anything. A lot of them are women businesses. And most of the time, they lack access to funding, lack access to new markets, lack access to mentoring, lack access to actually building their capabilities. We've been developing for a while now globally, and It's been 3 years, I believe, we brought it to the region across so many markets, an initiative where we bring women entrepreneurs, and it doesn't have to be someone who's in fintech. It's any entrepreneur in any field, and help them actually in getting this. So, of course, we cannot do this for every single woman-owned business across the region, so it has to go through a selection process, a competition, and we provide them access to funding, a 1-year-long mentoring with the right partners, but also through the Visa Global Network, access to new markets or building partnership with people that are going to help them actually expand those markets. One of my favorite story is this girl in Morocco who created this marketplace for handicraft. Handicraft is a very important part of tourism in Morocco. They're extremely proud of it. Actually, the Ministry of Tourism it's called the Ministry of Tourism and Handicrafts. And she created this platform where she brought in all of those ladies that do handicraft, taught them how to manage their money, taught them how to take a picture of their goods so that they can publish it on a website, as simple as that, so they can publish it on a marketplace, but also help them sell globally by providing them the right infrastructure, the payment infrastructure as well that goes behind it. She won a She's Next award, and then we kept very close to her. One of the things that we're doing with her today is actually helping her go to the biggest retailers in the world. I'm not going to name it, but one of them is out of Sweden, to actually sell those handicrafts in their collection lines. And because of the connection with us, we were able to make this connection with those big retailers. So this is the kind of things that we try to do as well to empower more women externally.
It's fulfilling to see companies like Visa really driving impact, because I feel companies with such scale, the impact is truly unbeatable on the market. Shaikha, over to you. I mean, you've also mentioned a lot of initiatives that Rotana is driving, and you mentioned a lot of stories that you're really proud of. Maybe you could share one of them with us and tell us how you're empowering women within the hospitality industry.
One of the stories that is very close to my heart is a hotel in Abu Dhabi, Saadiyat Rotana, which I encourage everyone to visit. I was luckily involved in that business from the start, from construction to operations. So generally, in the company, we have a policy that encourages all hotels to source from suppliers that are either women-led, by nationals, or locals. Like if we're in Riyadh, if we're in the UAE, we have to find suppliers, whether SMEs, whether bigger companies that are owned by nationals, which allows us also to give back and contribute to the communities we operate from. That's number one. So going back to Saadiyat, we commissioned an Emirati artist, a female Emirati artist that created all the artwork in the hotel, and the artwork had the theme, because Saadiyat is very well known for its nature and its, and I'm sure Leila knows that, and its wildlife environment. We created something which is very unique to the island and allowed us as a hotel to share a story to the guest about Abu Dhabi and the wildlife environment. And for her, it was very difficult to accomplish and complete this task in 2 years' time at a very large scale. So we were very proud to say that we were one of the first hotels, if not in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, to produce this much artwork with one artist, and we're proud to say that she is also a female artist. This is one of the things. Aside from what we do in Rotana, I also, I'm a board member in Abu Dhabi Business Women's Council, which is part of Abu Dhabi Chamber. And as Leila rightly said, we are 4 board members with a chairwoman, and each of one has a network where we try, we have a community, we have actually nationals, UAE national businesswomen and non-nationals, and we try to create workshops for them to help them develop and get the best potential out of every business. We're trying now to identify from every sector, whether F&B, tech, retail, businesses that has potential to grow and connect them with people like Visa, HSBC. There are a lot of companies that have programs within their banks and organizations that would adopt these businesses and grow them. So that's what we're currently doing, as well as Abu Dhabi Businesswomen's Council.
Thank you so much.
Also, not going back to what Hassa said, we're also proud to say that 30% of our Saudi workforce in Saudi are women.
No.
30%.
Yalda, you mentioned that as you entered VC, you didn't feel welcomed. So I think my question to you, like, how did your experiences shape your approach today in empowering women through your leadership role now that you have your own company?
Yeah, I'll say it was challenging not only in VC, but across the financial sector spectrum that I worked at different stages. So initially in investment banking, it was a very, very toxic environment. You were never really judged by the quality of the work that you were giving. You were judged by the amount of face time that you were putting in, by the number of hours you would work on the weekend, by how loud you were on the trading floor. Again, like when I started, these were actual parameters that you had to meet. And then I moved to PE in the MENA region. And that had its whole entire set of different challenges. So I remember I would arrive in Bahrain, and again, one of two women executive, and it would be an entire boardroom filled with men in thob. And obviously, you know, I'm here sitting, but that wasn't even the problem. The problem was that the main decisions wouldn't even take place inside the boardroom. They would take place in the majlis after working hours, where by design, a woman really wasn't included in that setup. And then in VC, so VC, that's like 2016, it's very much a boys' club, right? Especially in Los Angeles and the Valley, it's a boys' club that's led by the PayPal mafia. It's a boys' club that's led by, you know, Peter Thiel, Andrew Lonsdale, and all of these guys, where for them, you know, a handshake is sufficient within that boys' club for you to get access to the deal. And I was, you know, set to a completely, entirely different standard in terms of how much I had to prove myself to get access to those same opportunities. And then I think what saved me is that I learned, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but to disassociate myself from my gender. So for my investors, let's say, and obviously I would say 90% of my investors are male or male-led, they wouldn't see me as a female banker. They would really see me as a conduit for the best opportunities that existed in VC. And then for my team, they would see me as a subject matter expert in the field that I was in. And then for my counterparts in the VC industries, they would see me as an incredibly reliable source of capital. And then in terms of how that informed, you know, my leadership style and how the culture that we've built internally. So at Bracket, you're obviously judged by the quality of your work. Everyone has a seat at the table. We're very inclusive. We're very diverse. We empower decisions like, you know, starting a family. People should be proud to be entrepreneurial. And then, you know, we're not necessarily female-focused as a fund, but when we do back female founders, for me, it's incredibly important. I take it as a personal responsibility to make sure that they thrive, because the fact that we're backing them and we invest, you know, much later stage on the spectrum, it means that they've defied so many odds, right? This is an industry that allocates only 2% of capital to female founders. This is an industry where you only have 15% of VC firms that have female GPs. So I make it my personal responsibility to make sure that they thrive and that they succeed.
Thank you. Hassa, you're in one of the most challenging industries, driving one of the very, very trendy, I would say, initiatives everyone is passionate about, inclusion and diversity. Energy is globally sector is very challenging, where women participation stands at only 15%, right? So how are you doing with the initiatives within this sector?
طيب. Thank you, Melissa, for highlighting the global issue of women participation in the energy sector being 15%. I'll add to that challenge also a challenge of working on a D&I agenda in a male-dominant company that has been operating for the last 25 years with males only. I frequently get asked, why do we need to have D&I in companies? Why doesn't it naturally happen? And my answer is, you need to have D&I incorporated as a strategic pillar in your organization, and this is what we've done in SEC, because it's been going on for 25 years without women. So you need to be very strategic on how to incorporate them in this new sector. Not only that, it's also cultural awareness on inclusion of women in such an industry. With Vision 2030 being the North Star that we all work towards and having women empowerment as one of its pillars, SEC has taken it upon itself to include women in the energy sector and specifically in the electricity sector. We created a strategy that at the heart of it, we aspire to be the Saudi role model for diversity and inclusion. And our mission is to create an inclusive work environment that inspires equal opportunity, mutual respect, and empowering workplace. With 4 strategic pillars guiding us towards that vision, because again, it has to be structured, it has to be straightforward, creating an inclusive work environment and culture. This is a cultural change program by itself, inclusion of women, creating awareness program on biases, unconscious or conscious, whether it's both, we have programs to support that. Communicating and building capability within the organization through programs like Women in Business, through programs to educate the senior leaders on how to lead with diversity and inclusion at mind. While we also measure and monitor, this is again one of the important pillars, so we can check our progress towards our goals. We monitor through also engagement sessions to see is what we are doing working or not. And finally, our last pillar is the national impact, to share our knowledge and very unique niche experience with the rest of the world. And this is why I'm here today. And also with our other industries, like we've shared our knowledge with the Ministry of Defense, where it was very, honestly, I was very surprised when I was invited. I was like, are you sure? It's senior people, senior generals, and I'm there telling them how to create an inclusive work environment. They were very engaged. They were taking notes. And the minute that I finished, I got a lot of questions on how can they drive this within Ministry of Defense and within their areas of expertise. So you can see people are eager to drive this women empowerment in our region and specifically in Saudi Arabia. And with all of these efforts and this very well-structured strategy, I'm happy to share with you a couple of numbers. In Saudi Electricity Company being a very tough industry, in the more matured sectors, we have a very good percentage of women participation. For example, we have 37% of women in cybersecurity. Why? Because they've worked in banking before, because they've worked in other, banking was the first one, so they were there. So we attracted them. We developed also at a junior level, and we have them at senior level. Another sector that we have very good women representation, 30% are in internal audit. Risk and compliance has a very good women representation. While we have that, we are also committed not to only adding numbers and having women in Saudi Electricity Company, but we take it upon ourselves to have them develop to the next level, to have supporting programs to accelerate their growth within the organization. And I'm happy to share a very beautiful number, which is 185% increase in women representation in Saudi Electricity Company. And our succession planning that tells you that the organization takes women empowerment very seriously, we have a growth of 246% in the number of women in the succession planning pipelines. That is a very good indicator that the organization not only hires, develops, and also accelerate women throughout their career in Saudi electricity company. One thing we also have to do in the energy and specifically electricity sector is basically look at the job profiles. Where is it that we have difficulties taking in women? And I'm happy to say that 44% of the job profiles in Saudi electricity company has women included in them. So I believe with all of that, and again, guided by the vision and the strategy that we have towards women empowerment, we are doing very well, and we will not only be doing that, we're monitoring their progress and their engagement through several surveys to ensure that we are taking on corrective actions where it's needed, creating initiatives to support their growth and their prosperity within the organization. So, and I'm happy to say that this is my pure soul job, and that's why I do it.
You're very passionate about it.
I am very passionate. Again, I have been there for 16 years. I know how tough it is. I know the challenges that we face as women working there. From a cultural perspective, being a Saudi woman, having to balance work-life balance, I've always say it, if your child gets sick, who gets to sit at home?
You.
Women.
Women.
Women. It's normally women who gets to sit at home when their child is sick. That's why I said our vision is to create a Saudi role model DNI, taking into consideration these aspects. We don't want to make it difficult for women to be participating in the workplace. We want to empower her. We want to enable her, at the same time respecting that she is a woman empowered in Saudi Arabia and in Saudi electricity company.
Thank you. Thank you.
Minister, sorry if I can add to what Hassa was saying. I think we're very fortunate and grateful to be in the GCC. GCC, I think all countries in the GCC have already given enough empowerment, enough power. I think what women now have their own power, and they've proven to the world what we can do as women, not because we were empowered, but because we earned it through experience, through hard work, through dedication, through innovation, through many ways. Yeah. So we have to also acknowledge that our leadership has given us the right opportunity and the right support to get us to where we are today.
Thank you. Many of our audience are here also to listen to your thought leadership and your views on your respective sectors. I would love to hear, starting with you, Leila, a bit more about the digital world. You've been part of several digital transformations in the region. Where do you see that word going, especially for payment for you? Yep.
Yeah, so I always say there's no better time to be in payments than now, especially in the region we're in. So just to frame, I think the opportunity. I mean, the opportunity in terms of digital payment is still huge. We might not see it when you look at more developed markets, and even in the region, there's quite some disparity in terms of the maturity of digital payments across the region. You go to a place like Egypt where 95% of personal consumption is still cash, versus Saudi where it's probably sitting at 70%, the UAE is at 50%. So, but there is still so much that can be done on the digital payment side. And I think I look at it from a short-term probably and a mid to long-term perspective. In the short term, definitely providing better user experiences, more affordable, and responding to the youth. I think someone earlier mentioned Gen Z. Responding to the needs of those young people is super important. And fintechs are doing a fantastic job there. Supporting them, whether it's with financing or with technology and innovation is very important. Second big one is cybersecurity and fraud. I think cybersecurity and fraud has, I believe at the World Economic Forum in Davos, they said it's probably as big a problem as climate change today, especially when you see, and how do you integrate technologies like artificial intelligence into your fraud management systems? I think this is going to be essential for any player in the payment industry to adopt artificial intelligence into their fraud system, because the reality is the fraudsters are also doing this. I don't know if anyone has seen the announcement from OpenAI last week. They just released as a preview the voice generator, and it needs actually 15 seconds of your voice, 15 seconds.
Wow.
To generate your exact voice. So any of you who has their voice as their password with their banks, think again. Because
So what is Visa doing about this?
so exactly. So there's a lot of investment in AI that is being done in the fraud management system, in cybersecurity. In general, I think we invest something like $1 billion a year, but we just opened a fund, since you're in the VC world. We just created a fund of $100 million to invest specifically into AI companies that are addressing some of the digital payments challenges. The third one is more mid to long term, and in terms of what's coming up, right? So last week at the World Economic Forum in Saudi, the IMF launched their central bank digital currency paper. And I think you mentioned that SAMA is probably one of the most advanced regulators in the region. And I was listening to the deputy governor talking about this topic, and it's quite interesting the way they look at it more from how do we take this to facilitate wholesale transactions. So the B2B payments landscape is huge. I think it's $300 trillion. But how do you use technologies like blockchain to actually make it with less friction, more seamless, more affordable, and less of it's extremely heavy today. So there's a lot of work that is being done with the BIS, which is the central bank of central banks, around the concept that is called tokenized deposits. And how do we transform all of the deposits across all banks into a token, actually a token where money will flow digitally across that blockchain that links eventually all the banks in the world and all the central banks. So that's the mid to long term. So very exciting to be in payments.
Exciting times, indeed.
Any student is interested.
Okay, thank you. Moving to hospitality, the region is shaking with this transformation. Especially now Saudi as well has new targets. I mean, how does it look like from a hospitality perspective? What is your view on that?
From hospitality perspective, it's a very fast-moving industry. We've recovered way better than how we left in 2019. So markets are looking very exciting. There's a lot of potential. We have to basically focus on the guest. The guest continues to be our best revenue stream. So enhancing, elevating their experience will remain at the top of our concerns and our goals. So we will always try to use data, artificial intelligence technology to enhance and elevate their experience wherever possible, whether from their day experience, their stay at the hotel, whether from revenue, finding the right revenue streams, the right market segments. I think also COVID has changed a lot of people's perspective when it comes to health and wellness. So this is a segment that is growing and will continue to grow. And it's a segment that we have to also remain focused on. So aside from that, our customers are very aware. They know what they want. So environment friendly and sustainability, stuff that are linked to the environment is also very important. So this has to be in the back of our head when getting the right suppliers, building hotels. This always has to be in the back of our heads. Yeah.
Thank you. Yalda, you've developed a unique investment philosophy that you spoke about it with me. Can you tell us more about this, and then a bit of your views on the industry and opportunities within VC and the region?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my investment philosophy to investing is very similar to my philosophy in life, which is quite contrarian. So when we started investing in VC in 2016, you had tech valuations that were really spiraling out of control, right? So you had all these primary rounds chasing all these companies at 50, 60, 100 times multiple of revenues. You had, Tiger and SoftBank that were really inflating the valuation. And for us, that didn't really make sense. So instead of focusing on primaries, we decided to focus on secondaries, where it was very unpopular to do secondaries. If you were doing secondaries, it meant you couldn't get into the primaries. Actually, for us, it was a conscious decision that we wanted to be price makers, not price takers, that we wanted to pursue a value-driven approach to growth investing. So we really decided to focus on secondaries. And if you look at the ecosystem, back in '97, a company like Amazon would go public at a $300 million valuation. Nowadays, you have companies like SpaceX that are valued at $180 billion and that are still private. So the bulk of the wealth is being generated in private markets, and it is an anomaly that the secondaries market in VC is not larger than it actually is. If you look at every single other asset class, from real estate to public equities to cars to stamp, the secondaries market is always orders of magnitude the size of the primary markets. Anyway, so what we decided to position ourselves as liquidity providers to early stage investors and also to founders, right? So you have early employees at these big tech companies that have 99% of their wealth tied to that one company, and that one company is still not going public because companies are choosing to stay private much, much longer. And then you have early stage funds on the other side that have probably 80 to 90% of their NAV, so their net asset value, tied to one or two performance, and they need to go and raise their next funds. So we became a liquidity providers buying out their shares, and very often at a significant discount to the last valuation. So as a result, not only did we create, a very strong buffer and hedge within our portfolio, especially when the last couple of years when valuations really capitulated and multiples really compressed, but we also developed very strong allyships with the ecosystem of early stage startups and the founders, et cetera, because we became their liquidity provider of first recourse. So that's at the firm level. My views on the region, look, I'm incredibly optimistic about our region. I think it's the Arab world, especially in the Gulf, is kind of experiencing its renaissance moment. You have a very young population that's very ambitious, that's educated, and you have the backing of a very visionary government. So all these, it's a perfect storm for success, right? And I'd be surprised if, our fourth fund, Racket's fourth fund, which we plan to launch in a couple of years, doesn't include portfolio companies from the regions and exits from the regions and very successful stories from the region.
Thank you. Amazing and very promising. Our time together has almost flew by. Before we end the session, I would love just to hear maybe a word from each, a recommendation I would like to share with our audience today.
So I'm gonna probably on the theme that Yalda ended her previous discussion, I think. Well, first, to all of you graduating, congratulations. I think you made it. It's great. And for the others, have a blast. Enjoy it till it lasts, because what's waiting for you on the other side is a bit harder. But obviously, I look at the Middle East Club of the London Business School. I think you have a fantastic opportunity to give back to this region. As Yalda said, this is a region that is living its renaissance, and would love to see you all come and seriously give back. The region needs you, seriously needs you.
Thank you. Shaikha.
I think I don't think in my opinion you can't beat yourself so hard. I think you have to acknowledge the good, the bad in you, accept it, move on, and just do what you love with passion. Thank you.
I guess my advice is don't take no for an answer. Get comfortable with risk, with uncertainty, with volatility. Embrace challenge. In every crisis, there is opportunity, and we live in very volatile times, geopolitically, economically, in different areas. And I would always say the most crucial step is the first step. So take that step, because if you don't begin, your journey never will.
As for me, speaking from experience, my advice to the future generation and to the London Business School and the young generation that we have here with us is focus on yourself. Build your knowledge, build your brand, and opportunities will find you.
Thank you.
So true.
Thank you
you,
so much for being here. It's really inspiring. I mean, please join me for another round of applause for amazing work.
Thank you so much.